while we overcome our substantial technical difficulties we're having this evening, we will take this pause for a short commercial announcement. This is my book, The Red-Green Axis, Refugees, Immigration, and the Agenda to Erase America. It's a good book, it's a short book, it's easy to read, and anybody who reads it will become probably more educated than 99% of the people in this country about the government.
The scum.
They're trying to mess with us. That's what it is.
That's Russia.
Waves.
Russia's doing it.
Russians.
I heard that. It's Trump's fault.
I think actually it's the aliens. So anyway, it's a very good book. It's a very short book. I'll have you know that you can get it at Amazon for $6 plus shipping. And totally ruining my marketing program, the Center for Security Policy will let you download the PDF of this very same book for free. It's a royal pain in the neck when you're trying to sell books, I've got to tell you. And I make it even worse by selling mine for $10. And the reason I do that, well, frankly, to be honest with you, because I want to make money. There's a lot of really important reasons. Yes, I will sign them for an additional fee. But yes, thank you, Mike. But there's a lot of very good reasons to have this book. It makes you instantly knowledgeable, and the most important reason of all, I need the money. And also, my compatriot Phil has his book here, See Something, Say Nothing, which recounts his battle with the bureaucracy, where he was investigated 9 times for identifying terrorists in our nation. It's stunning, the story that he tells in this book. It's simply stunning. And I say, you have to have this book. Both excellent reads, both highly recommended, and both you need to purchase because we need the money. And now back to our technical difficulties. Oh, it's here. Oh, all right. Okay, so now I've been told I only have 30 minutes and I have about 100 slides, so I'm going to have to speed through these. But the first few are very important. My book's called The Red-Green Axis. All right. So I'm going to focus more on the red. And this is the red. We've got Karl Marx, we've got Vladimir Lenin, and how many people can recognize the name of the person in the middle? Hands? None. Okay. And here's the green. And we call it the green because there's so much green behind the everything the Muslims do, all the flags, a lot of their history. The axis, you have to understand this. You have to take the big picture. Take a look at this from 30,000 feet. The axis is an asymmetric military strategy of conquest of our country. It is a strategy to take over this country without firing a shot. And it has many different facets to it, all of which are at play right before our eyes today. Here's a snapshot of what the Muslim Brotherhood looks like. I did this chart a few years ago. And all those connections, I don't have time to go through them. We spent an hour talking about it, but I can defend every one of those connections. Now, about Sergei. He was a 22-year-old anarchist when he wrote something called the Revolutionary Catechism, 1869. Now I want you to read what he writes in the preamble. Convinced that the people's, that's you and me, happiness can only come about as the result of an all-destroying popular revolt, the Society of Revolutionaries will use all its resources and energy towards increasing and intensifying the evils and miseries of the people until at last their patience is exhausted and they're driven to a general uprising. Doesn't that sound like what's going on today? Well, if you follow through the Antifa groups, the RevCon groups, the Refuse Fascism groups, and everybody else, including the Islamist groups, are all working to build this atmosphere of hatred and division in our society. They're doing that deliberately. The issue is never the issue with the left. The issue is always the revolution. The 60s radicals said that, and it's one of the few times they're really honest. They don't care about what the issue is. They don't care about gay rights. They don't care about civil rights. They don't care about the First Amendment. They don't care about anything except in so much as it can be used as a vehicle to help them obtain power. And they do it by wrapping themselves in the mantle of compassion and thereby grasping the high ground and high rhetorical ground, putting us all on the defensive. See, because once they get up there, if you're against anything, they say, well, then you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a homophobe, you're an Islamophobe, name your phobe. That's a tactic. It's a tactic. And the pretext is social justice, equity, fairness. You've all heard it, but it's all bogus. They don't want social justice. They don't want equity. They don't want fairness. They want power. Their power to the exclusion of everybody else, and their wealth also at everybody else's expense. Here, for example, are a few of those communists who have obtained that power. And my favorite one is Castro's Fisherman's Cottage. That's what he called it, Fisherman's Cottage. And every communist leader is vastly wealthy. The Castro brothers were considered to be the most wealthy people in the world because they owned the entire economy of Cuba. And that's the way it is with all of them. And they can do and have whatever they want, and nobody else can say anything because the secret police will come for you if you do. So this whole hate narrative, it has a specific strategic purpose. And Lenin started it by saying, we must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn towards those who disagree with us. So if you disagree, we have to hate you. And in the 40s, they passed around that message. Keep on saying these people are bigots, they're haters, they are anti-Semitic for the sole purpose of giving us a bad name, discrediting us in the world's eyes. And as you know, you tell a lie and over and over and over and over and over and over, and nobody challenges it, it becomes truth in the public eye. Now, Herbert Marcuse was a communist who came to the United States, and he wrote a very powerful essay in the 1960s called Repressive Toleration, where he argued that because the left didn't have acceptance in this country, that the right had to be completely silenced so that the left could get its voice heard. And he said, not equal, but more representation of the left would be equalizing of the prevailing inequality. That's their twisted mind thinking. And then Saul Alinsky put it all into practice with the rules for radicals. Now, look, here is the law that gives the President of the United States absolute, unquestionable authority to omit from this country anybody that he deems at all a danger. He has complete discretion. That's in the law. And you saw how Obama appointed judges, and actually one Bush appointed judge beyond me, opposed those bans. And they've opposed the latest one as well. They have no authority to do that. They're basically acting like executives. But they're challenging him because if he ignores them, then all the voices in the Congress will demand impeachment. That's the game. And so now we have, here's a Islamist, here's a communist, works for the International Office of Migration. She is one of their spokespeople. How do you like that? Workers' World Party, Right for Socialism. Yeah. And here's Nihad Awad. Black Lives Matter is our matter. He's the director of CARE. Here's another person from a Muslim Brotherhood Front Group, the Muslim American Society. Now look what she says here. We are the community that staged a revolution across the world. If we could do that, why can't we have that revolution in America? She said that at a Islamic Society of North America 2015 conference. And here we have, this shows you just a snapshot of the depth of the penetration. And I have typed out what he said here to these CARE people. CARE, the moderate Muslim, is our most effective weapon. CARE people are not moderate Muslims. They have been designated a terrorist group by the United Arab Emirates. They were an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, and the only reason they weren't indicted was because Obama was elected before they could get to that point. And he shut down the entire investigation. And now the statute of limitations has run out. So here's just a few pictures that kind of back up what I've been saying. All of it, the monument issue, all the same thing. All trying to provoke, all trying to sow division. Okay, Cleveland last summer. And here's Nihad Awad in front of the White House bragging about his protest. And he's supposed to be the moderate Muslim. Oh, well, I just thought I'd throw that in for a brief interlude. We gotta laugh. I mean, we really do have to laugh, you know? So, the Refugee Resettlement Program was actually first conceived at the Conference on Human Settlements in 1976 by the United Nations. And it didn't talk about saving all the refugees, it talked about redistributing people, resources, and land throughout the world, because, of course, some people were unfortunate where they wound up living, so it's not fair that, for example, Somalis get to live in a desert wasteland and we get to live in this verdant countryside. So, of course, there has to be population redistribution. That's their argument. The UN is entirely socialist, has been from day one. Another goal was to abolish private property, because private property stands in the way of doing everything they want. And population control. Population control. And we all listened. We have reduced our replacement rates to essentially zero. And that's what the entire West has done. We were good boys and girls and paid attention and did what the nice UN told us to do. And we reduced our population to barely replacement rates. In some countries, it's below replacement rates. And then the UN said, you idiots, what do you do that for? Now you're going to have to get replacement migration to get people, young people in to take the place of all the people that you don't have to fill those jobs. That's the game. It's a complete fraud. It's a complete lie. It's a complete put down. It's a complete game they play against us. And it's very malicious, very malevolent, and its goal is, as with everything else, to subvert, undermine this country until we finally collapse. Second largest organization in the world is Islamic Organization of Language Cooperation, big influence in the UN. UN selects most of our refugees. That's just a quick rundown of the refugee program, but I don't have time, so I'm going to have to just bounce through all this. It's dangerous, secretive, costly, and unfair. Well, we know about it being unfair, but this is what Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said to say about it. You know, he was the brainchild of 9/11. He said the brothers would relentlessly continue their attacks, and the American people would eventually become so tired, so frightened, they would just want it to end. Doesn't that sound a lot like Nechayev? Isn't that interesting, huh? Eventually, America will expose her neck for us to slaughter. Jihad-minded brothers would immigrate to the United States. So here's a snapshot of ISIS investigation in the United States so far, and it's not August, it's to September. I didn't have time to fix that. That's just a snapshot of all the various terrorists. Over 300 refugees. Now, Obama wouldn't tell us that. As soon as Jeff Sessions took the Department of Justice, and when Trump was in, he opened up the records and he found that over 300 refugees have been involved in terrorist investigations. Obama claimed none. All the refugee contractors said, oh no, they're all nice people, they never do that. It's a lie. And when it comes to creating chaos and building this atmosphere of anarchy, all of those events, Fort Lauderdale was a Muslim terrorist, Alexandria was that radical left-wing guy who shot the congressman, Las Vegas, we don't really know what that was, although Pollock's girlfriend is supposed to have been a rabid anti-Trumper. But the fact that we don't know, to me, says loads. It says that the media is not telling us. Why is the media not telling us? If it was a conservative or was somebody that favored their narrative, they'd be all over the paper about it. They're not saying a thing. So I think it is the reality that he was another Antifa type. But I think he was a deep agent kind of Antifa type, not just a typical lunatic, because his whole life was secret. So we don't know about that. But even if he was just a lunatic, all of the stuff that's going around today, all of the insanity, all of the hypertension that they've created, guarantees more things like that just from the people that are on the edge. And we can put it all at their feet because they've created this atmosphere on purpose.
Yep.
That's a snapshot of what refugees get when they get here. Refugees take jobs Americans won't? Well, sure they do, but they can take welfare while they're at it. And so it winds up not really just being a subsidy for business. And despite getting all these benefits, refugees use welfare at rates that are off the charts compared to Americans. And you can see just over those 5 years, and longer than that, going all the way back to the first refugees in 1980, you can compare their rates, even the ones that were here from 80 to 89 with US born, they're still higher after 40 years. That's the back of the envelope cost estimate of what the welfare costs of the refugees have been from 2009 to 2014. Could be higher than that, it could be lower than that. There are a lot of different variables that go into it. There's all kinds of refugee problems. A big one is the languages. You know, little communities throughout the United States are becoming towers of Babel, where there's people speaking dozens of languages in schools and nobody understands what's going on. The school ratings have dropped enormously and the costs have gone up to teach these people English. A lot of refugees come here with TB. 88% of people with multi-drug resistant TB, active cases, are foreign born, 88%. And Obama was nice about lifting the ban on HIV immigrants in 2010, and that's a CDC estimate of how many come per year and the cost. And here's a snapshot of what it looks like from 2003. And the reason I chose 2003 is because that's when the Unaccompanied Alien Children Program was transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services. It had been in DHS earlier, or not DHS, yeah, DHS and Immigration Service before that. The red numbers are estimates, and it's important to note here, look at 2017 and 2018. The total column on the right-hand side. In 2016, the numbers are very high. 2017, they're lower. In 2018, and those are my estimates, but they're a lot lower. They're based on what we've seen so far. Why do you think that is? And here's another little factoid. Here's the Resettlement Program. 15, 16, 17, if you look at the total at the bottom, it went up from 2.6 billion in 2017. 2018, the Trump proposed budget is less than 2015. 28% reduction, that's what he promised, and that's what he delivered. At least that's what he's proposed now. It's going to go to Congress next, all bets are off. But the point is, while we're all worried about everything and we're all upset about things that aren't happening, quietly, unbeknownst to a lot of people, he's doing a lot of things. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more here. But a big issue here, this is the Refugee Resettlement Program. It's not just refugees. It's asylum seekers, it's SIVs, Special Immigrant Visas, it's the Cuban Haitian Entrant Program, it's asylum seekers, trafficking victims, and unaccompanied alien minors. It's a huge program, huge. And if you look at this here, the HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, the Unaccompanied Alien Children Program pays out more than the refugee program. In other words, we're paying more out to handle refugees through illegal aliens through the HHS than we are for refugees. And then we have families of asylum seekers, 10 to 15,000 a year. Families that come with these supposedly unaccompanied alien children, who weren't really unaccompanied, about 50,000 a year. Temporary protected status, there's 325,000 people in this country, including many Syrians. Most people don't know that we worried about bringing in 10,000 Syrians. There were 100,000 Syrians here from 2012 that came in through non-immigrant visas. 100,000. The diversity visa program, another little one that you've never heard of. Trump is proposed abolishing it. Great idea. And humanitarian parole, we have no idea how many people they bring in. This is a snapshot of the voluntary agencies, the nonprofit, I should say nonprofit, the tax-exempt private contractors paid by the federal government by the head to resettle refugees. And you can see immediately, by the head, what does that mean? It means incentives to bring in more, doesn't it? Yep. They survive based on how many refugees they are able to resettle. So it's not surprising that even though it's illegal for them to go out and advocate for their program, they are in the streets nonetheless demanding Trump get rid of the immigration ban, demanding more refugees. They're all leftists, by the way, so we're paying them hundreds of millions of dollars to go out and agitate on behalf of refugees at our expense. And the illegal alien youth program is huge. And refugees get all kinds of special grants. As I say, and normally I'd go into it, but I don't have time now. And then the refugee resettlement contractors and all the 320 subcontractors that help them, and then the thousands of nonprofits that help them get money from Ford Foundation, which has net assets 12 billion. Soros had 6 billion, now it has 24 billion because he just added 18 billion of his own personal fortune. Kaplan, that's Welch's grape juice. You never know these things. Z. Smith Reynolds, Reynolds Tobacco, Starbucks, Tides Foundation, and many others. Most people don't know that the left cries poverty. The left and foundations alone have about $150 billion to fight against us. And we have not even 1/10 that amount. So you know how they cry about the Koch brothers. And the Koch brothers aren't even conservative, they're just sort of libertarian. Occasionally they do what we like. They're puny. They toss in maybe 10 or 20 million against 150 billion. Okay, so what has he done? Well, he's reduced the refugee caps to 45,000. Now, we all asked for 0. That's what we wanted. We wanted a moratorium on the whole program so that they could fix the vetting process and really, I'd say, abolish the entire program because it's dangerous, it's costly, all the things I said before. And it generates its own incentives to bring in ever more refugees. And it is a cornerstone of the red-green axis strategy because it brings in people from hundreds of other cultures. And not only does it create a situation where we're putting many, many cultures that don't get along together to try to get along, it dilutes our culture. and it brings in more and more people, the equivalent of a city every year, to dilute our power and influence both in the voting box and in our national character. The fewer people that understand who we are, where we came from, what we're about, what our purpose is, our constitution-based republic, we cease to exist. And that's why they're just fanatically defending this program, fanatically defending open borders, because they want this country, as it stands, like I say, to disappear. It's the agenda to erase America. That's what it is. So, he reduced the refugee caps. It wasn't what we wanted, but I've got to tell you, I know from inside the Beltway, I know from very good sources, that it was an extremely difficult fight, and the White House actually outmaneuvered the State Department swamp in getting those reductions. The State Department wanted to bring it back up to 70,000, which it's been historically for the last 10 years. So that was one minor victory. He reduced the budget, as I pointed out. He's enforcing border laws, and what is that doing to the number of unaccompanied alien children, the number of illegal aliens generally coming across the border? Is bringing them down substantially. Also, he's tightening up the asylum program. The asylum program is just fraught with fraud. Fraught with fraud. And you can see, if you go back here, if you look at the asylum program, it says asylees, down there, it was up to 31,000 in 2015. And there's hundreds of thousands waiting for a decision. And while they're waiting for the decision, they get to be in the United States. Some have been waiting here for years. We don't really know who these people are. But whereas Obama would just get them to court, sign them off, and let them go most of the time, Trump is tightening that up substantially. So while that might not affect the people here awaiting, well, it will affect them because a lot of them will be thrown out, but it will also discourage many who would try to get in on that basis committing fraud. So it's going to reduce the asylum numbers. So that's one of those little-known things. He's suspending the family reunification program. You know, once you get a person here, a refugee here, the refugee contractors say, bring in your whole family. And so they invite all their family in. And guess what? A lot of them really aren't family. You know, in the Muslim countries, they're maybe wife number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, count whatever. And their children, and their parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Somali program was suspended for 3 years, even during the Obama administration, because they couldn't figure out who 80% of these family people were supposed to be. 80% fraud. So he's trying to suspend that. And this is interesting, enhanced vetting for female refugees. Now, why do you think that would matter? Well, that's one reason. Well, that's another reason, apparently. What's another reason?
Very poor women.
Well,
they come in and try to marry our
Right.
black and white men.
right. That's another reason. And another reason is it makes it that much more unappealing for a refugee to come here and then say, well, I'll bring my wife later. If his wife can't come, why would he come? Maybe he might not. Of course, maybe you might say, well, I'll get another wife. You know, who knows? You never know with these folks. But I think that has a lot of ramifications. And female refugees get no oversight. That's another issue. You know, so as we saw with what's his name's wife, the San Bernardino bombers, killer's wife. She didn't get any oversight. Well, she should have. And the latest ban suspends indefinitely travel from Syria, Somalia, Iran, and 3 other terrorist nations. That's great. Plus North Korea and Venezuela, which are also terrorist nations, although not a lot of people from there come here. But it's a great, because it essentially is the ban that we wanted. These are the worst of the worst. We wanted them not to come, and that ban does it. And of course, another judge has blocked it, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on legally, and the Supreme Court will throw it out. It's just, the trouble is that it's going to take time. And he's proposed ending the diversity visas. So these are a bunch of good things that he's done on this program specifically in an atmosphere where doing anything causes nationwide riots. So I think, you know, we have to look at it, stand back a little bit, and look at it from that perspective and take some heart in the fact that he's thinking and he's trying to do things. He's trying to do things that he can't do either legislatively because the members of Congress are a bunch of cowards, or because he just can't get it through. He's trying to do it with regulation, with the phone and the pen thing. Just like he did with Obamacare, which was beautiful, brilliant, brilliant.
Why does that Hawaii judge have standing to make the ruling that he did?
Let me talk later. He doesn't. That was a ruling he has no authority to make. He was basically deigning himself to be the executive of the first executive of the United States. He's not. He's not the commander-in-chief. Well, I would say yes. I would say yes. But the danger is, if he does, I think that's half the reason. They're trolling for bait for him to jump on, hoping that he'll do something that they can then say is an impeachable offense. And even if they don't get it, they will scream for it. They're looking for a pretext. And plus, Trump is trying to do things constitutionally, which we should be all happy about. Trying to restore a respect for the Constitution. So, what have we done? Well, all of us here are testimony that we've defied the swamp and we continue to do so. I'm happy about that. We have raised public awareness of the refugee issue. Phil, I, Ann Corcoran, other people like us, all you folks have raised awareness over these past 2 years about what this refugee resettlement program is and how dangerous it is. Without you all, 31 governors wouldn't have opposed the Syrian refugee resettlement. That wouldn't have been a campaign issue. So we have to take credit for these things. This March, my friends in Rutland, Vermont, defeated a 5-term mayor who had attempted to open a refugee program without asking anybody's permission. We absolutely kicked his ass, excuse the language. And unbeknownst again to a lot of you folks, all we hear about is the bad appointments that get in to the White House and to the agencies. You don't know, but we know, Phil and I know, about the bad appointments that we have worked to make sure don't become members of this administration. A big one is the person that I said earlier with Michael McCall. He's the head of the House Homeland Security Committee, and he was up to be considered for Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He's a CARE tool, and he's an open borders fool who lies about things and says he's going to do one thing and does another, which unfortunately is all too typical. We got him defeated. He's not going to be DHS Secretary, and that is a very good thing. We're conducting law enforcement training. Why we? I don't say me. I say we, generally speaking. David Borys, you guys have to get to know him. He doesn't charge a thing for it, except for his expenses. He's a former chief of police in Georgia, and so he, for that reason, he has a lot of credibility with local police, and he is a bang-up, powerful program of instructing police about the dangers of Sharia and refugee resettlement. We have John Wandolo, of course, I think most of you know, former FBI agent. Claire Lopez, former intelligence agent. What should we do? What should we do? Well, we've done a bunch of stuff, but we got to keep doing stuff, and you always ask me, what should we do? Number one, we are against a major force here. We are against powers and principalities. We are against forces of evil like we never have been. And for my money, we have too much as a nation, although I'm probably talking to the wrong people. But as a nation, as a whole, we have abandoned God.
Amen.
And we are paying the price for that. We are paying the price for that. Well, what's they say, you can't fool an honest man? Well, you do as they did in Judges, and do everything that's right in the sight of your own eyes, and you get what you deserve. And this, unfortunately, what's happened to us. So I ask all of you, I pray every day for our country. And I ask all of you to do the same thing, and we can pray specifically. God will hear us.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
We need to elect strong leaders, and I think that's starting to happen. The general population is getting it. That even if you get a Republican in there, 9 times out of 10 they turn squishy and, they become nobodies. We got to restore our constitutional principles, our sovereignty. We have to defend our rights in public and private. That means we have to confront these people. We have to say, you can't just get away with saying that. We can't be silent anymore.
No.
And Sharia Crime Stoppers, I can tell you about that, not now, but afterwards if you want, I can get you information about that. We need to designate the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Trump administration, because of the swamp critters in it, have not done so far, but we're trying to do that. And we need to promote various legislations, the Refugee Absorptive Capacity Act, American Laws for American Courts, female genital mutilation, I have that acronym backwards, and many others. Thank you, folks. Thank you.